Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our quarterly book club. We are discussing the wonderful book by Scott Miller today called Master Mentors. My name is Victoria Prescott, and I'm an advocacy director at the collaborative WIM, and I'll be leading today's discussion. During the first part of the event today, you'll get the chance to meet some new friends and network with everyone who joined us today, along with discussing your maybe key takeaways from the book or sharing your own mentorship stories. And then for the remainder of the event, we'll transition to the live Q&A with Scott Miller. And before I get started, I would love to, first of all, thank our host today, CFA Society Atlanta, and all the volunteers who joined us today and who have made this event possible. And special thanks to Aradna from the CFA Society Atlanta. And I'd like to pass it on to you, Aradna, for just a few words.
Great, thanks, Victoria. Hello and welcome. I'm Aradna Kadriwal, CFA past president and current D&I chair for the CFA Society of Atlanta. A little bit about our local chapter here. We have 1,600 members and we were founded in 1960. Our society supports our members as leaders in finance by upholding the highest ethical and professional standards while advancing our missions on diversity, financial literacy, and education for the people of Georgia and the global finance community. As part of the D&I committee, we are proud to showcase that women make up almost 17% of our local membership, and we're striving to get to 25% diverse membership by year 2025. We are absolutely thrilled to be part of the collaborative WIM group and the host society for today's online series featuring Scott Miller and his book, Master Mentors. So thank you so much for joining today. A shout out to the CWIM leaders, Sarah, Regina, and Victoria for giving CFA Society Atlanta the opportunity to host today's event. Thank you to all the volunteers. And we hope you enjoy the program. And with that, I'll pass it back to Victoria.
Thank you so much, Aradna, and thanks again to all the volunteers. And thank you for being our supporter and an ally for us. I think this is a very important mission, and it's very important for us to join our forces as we go and kind of move forward towards our common goal. And with that, I would like to introduce our author today, Scott Miller, who actually joined us for the entire duration of the event. And some of you will be able to network with him and ask questions and maybe discuss some transformational insights in the small breakout rooms that we will be transitioning into momentarily here. Scott Miller is an executive vice president of thought leadership at the personal development powerhouse, Franklin Covey, where he spent 25 years of his career in various roles. And as many of you might know, Franklin Covey is one of the most respectful and influential leadership development firms. Scott's professional roles evolved as he became a multi-best-selling author, radio and podcast host, leadership coach, author and columnist, and a global keynote speaker. He continues to consult, and he is proud to continue his collaboration with Franklin Covey and the personal relationship that he has built throughout the years. The book we are discussing today, Master Mentors, became #1 bestseller on Amazon even before its release in September 2021. And later, Scott will share some of the latest insights and developments that he's been working on recently, which are very, very exciting. Scott, thank you so much for joining us today. And we are very, very proud to have this opportunity to ask you questions directly and just discuss all your work with you directly. It's incredible.
Thanks, Victoria. I'm just enjoying seeing my book on everybody's virtual background. More of that. That's awesome. Thank you all. Delighted to be here. Looking forward to spending an hour or so with you. Excited to talk about mentoring and some of the insights I've learned from master mentors. I'm privileged to host what is now the world's largest weekly leadership podcast on leadership. It's about 7 million subscribers and listeners and viewers each Tuesday. And the book, of course, is based on some of my favorite interviews in that podcast series. So looking forward to the group today.
That's amazing. And hopefully your audience just grows after today's event. I think we all your fans and we all enjoyed the book. And we will look forward to learning more about it. And with that, we'll transition to the breakout rooms. So for the next 20 minutes or so, you'll get an opportunity to network with your new friends or maybe friends that you've met before, and also with Scott, obviously. And as you are doing so, remember to turn on your cameras and just be as interactive as possible and just show your face, don't be shy. And we're all here to learn and grow together. And as you're discussing maybe some of your own mentorship stories, remember to come up with one question that you would like to ask Scott later in our live Q&A session on behalf of your group. So we'll see you shortly. Welcome back. And now is maybe the most exciting part of today's event is actually your chance to ask all your questions, discuss all your thoughts directly with Scott. So if you'd like to ask a question, please remember to turn on your camera, get off mute, and raise your hand to get in the queue so you can ask your question live. Alternatively, you can also send your question via chat and I will read it out loud for Scott. But as we get started, Scott, maybe from a high level perspective, could you share with us kind of your motivation and what is kind of your most favorite part of this field of leadership and personal development and coaching and just what excites you about it?
Sure. So for those who may not have had a chance to read the book yet, shame on you. No, I'm kidding. I mean, I've read the first 1/3 of 800 books. I know I've been right where you are. So I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I've been an associate of the Franklin Covey Company for 26 years, was the chief marketing officer for a decade. And as I began to want to do different things, I started writing books. Master Mentors was my 4th book. You can see some of them behind me here in the whole kind of marketing, leadership, management space. And I started hosting this podcast. How it came about is the CEO said to me one day, Scott, I think we need a leadership channel. And I said, okay, when you say channel, do you mean like CNN? Do you mean like Spotify? Do you mean like a leadership channel, like a business channel? I mean, he didn't really know. He had no idea. He just wanted a leadership channel. And so I, decided to interpret what he said. And so I launched a podcast, one of multi-millions that launched a podcast, 4 years ago. But unlike most millions, I didn't stop after the 9th episode because of 4 or 5 subscribers, which is what we had after, a couple of weeks. I kept going and kept going week after week for 200 weeks. And so I launched this podcast where I started interviewing people. In the beginning, we had no guests. I would be calling up our book agents and publishers and publicists begging for a guest. And they'd say, yeah, I can get you someone next month. I'm like, no, tomorrow at 2 p.m. I need a guest tomorrow at 2 p.m. And so it was not glamorous in the beginning. I had no idea how to interview someone. I took my inflated confidence and just turned the camera on with the team and started interviewing some people, and it got better and better. And I got less worse and less worse. There was no shortage of vitriol on the web about my early interviewing skills. And then after the first 100 interviews, I realized, Victoria, after interviewing some major people, right? I mean, Deepak Chopra and Ariana Huffington and Seth Godin and David Rubenstein and Steve Schwartzman, and on and on and on, I realized most of what they said that was valuable was often off camera, like the 3 or 4 minutes in the green room, metaphorically, or when they hung up and we had the real chat. And so with their permission, I decided to write the book, Master Mentors, kind of like Chicken Soup for the Soul. This is not Jim Collins' Good to Great, right? I mean, it is what it is. It's a light, easy, breezy read where I picked out one insight from each of the 30 people that I thought were interesting and agreed to be in the book, and wrote a short chapter about it. And it had a I think a nice impact because it was short chapters. Most books are 60, 70,000 words, which is why most of us read the first half of all books because the last half suck because the publisher required X number of words and the author only had, Y number of words. So the book has done well. I'm in the process now of launching Master Mentors Volume 2, which comes out in October, 30 new mentors, 30 new insights. To some of your horror, you've listened to it on audio. My wife apologizes to you. But I think mentoring has become something that is crucial to everyone's success. I mean, all of my success is because somebody believed in me more than I believed in myself. Someone saw some light in my messes. They saw some excitement in my mistakes and such. So I'm on this sort of evangelizing tour to talk about mentoring and maybe even redefine mentoring. And I'd love to talk about that if we have a chance to maybe broaden our mindset of what it means to be mentored and to be a mentor. It isn't always, going up to the fourth floor with someone with a E, a V, and a P in their title, but mentoring can happen in so many different ways.
No, it's great and a great point you bring in. And actually, we got the question through chat. Camille is asking, do you have any advice on how to design a mentorship program? So I assume, within an organization.
Yeah, I have lots of advice around it. In fact, I'm actually writing a new book for HarperCollins called The Ultimate Mentoring Guide. And it really is focused on the different roles that mentors play and the roles that they don't play and how long those roles should play. I think the most important part of designing a mentor program is clarifying what the mentor's role is. Because by the very nature of being a mentor, you have a little bit of positional power. You probably have some longevity in the firm. You probably, by just age definition, have, some tenure. And with that comes hubris and confidence and some arrogance, not intentional. I think too often mentors try to turn their mentees into miniature versions of them. Well, if I was you, I would do it this way. Or when I was in that role, I did it this way. And a mentor has to resist at all caution, trying to confuse their journey with their mentee's journey. They have to understand, what is it you're trying to accomplish? And how can my successes and my failures help you make that happen? So I think as you're designing a mentorship program, it's super important that you educate your mentors on what their role is and what it's not. These are the traps you might fall into. Resist those. These are the types of questions you should ask. I actually developed a career coaching program called Ignite Your Genius. And a lot of organizations are using the career coaching program as a bridge between mentors and mentees. I think the first question a mentor should ask is, what is it you're trying to accomplish? Are you trying to get promoted? Are you trying to earn more money? Are you trying to leave the company? Are you trying to get a new job? Are you trying to fund a business? Are you trying to build whatever it is? But your mentee has to be clear on what it is they're trying to accomplish. It might even be eliminating some behaviors. And then once the mentee is clear on it, then the mentor has to deliberately think about, how can I help that person with their expertise, with their fears, with their passions, and not confuse my journey with their journey? I see it happen way too often.
Yeah, very, very interesting concept. I often see, and I think that mentors feel like they need to teach people exactly how they got there, and everybody needs to follow exact same steps. But I think it's very important to kind of like step outside of your own shoes.
It is. It's more important to ask the right questions than to give the right answers, which means a mentor has to be good at both listening and speaking, which is counterintuitive to most leaders because most of us have spent most of our careers talking a lot, right? In persuasion mode, in influence mode, in communication mode. Most of us aren't expert listeners because we've been trained to communicate well, right? How many of you have had a course on listening? I haven't. Thank you, Camille. How many of you, however, have had a course on public speaking or how to use PowerPoint or how to persuade people or how to broaden your vocabulary? So it's somewhat counterintuitive to a lot of mentors.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of on a related topic, we got a few questions from multiple people, from Linda, Sarah, and Celia, who are asking, what are the differences between mentor and a friend, or mentor and a coach, or even mentor and an advocate?
subtle, but probably profound. Simply, I think a coach is someone typically who's paid for their service, oftentimes. And a mentor is someone that isn't. They have an abundance mindset. That isn't to say that coaches have a scarce mindset, but that's their business. Mentors are people like us that have a day job or two, and we choose to abundantly give of our wisdom, not just around our successes, but around our failures. And we choose to abundantly give back to someone that might even be a peer, that might be a subordinate or a more junior person. I think an advocate is someone that actually can persuade on your behalf, that actually can lend their credibility to and for you. I don't know that that's a mentor's job, but I would say when mentoring goes sideways, one of the reasons is because there haven't been good boundaries set by both parties. As a mentor, I am willing to have 7 calls with you every other Thursday from 3 to 4 o'clock. I'll show up. I'll be prepared. I said 7 calls, not 12 calls. Please don't ask me to use my Rolodex. Please don't ask me to introduce you to my VC funders. Please don't ask me to fund you get my point, right? Is set really good boundaries so that the mentee knows what is and isn't off limits. And then as the mentor trusts the mentee, then she or he might choose to change the rules. They might say later on, you know what? I love your idea. Tell me more about that. You might be thinking you might want to fund it. You might want to be their advocate. Like here's a fundamental point, I think, is that mentorship isn't always someone you know. I think we think about mentorship of being someone, like I said earlier, on the 4th floor of the executive suite. I tell you, the people that have mentored me the most in life, I've never met. Some of them don't even know I'm alive. I listened to their radio program for 5 years. I watched their podcast or their newsletter or saw them at a conference speak, and they've been mentoring and they don't even know I'm alive. Now, maybe later in life, I emailed them, but I tell you, the people that have had the biggest influence on me as a mentor were not formal relationships. They were completely informal. And in many cases, I never even met them. I was just a voracious, insatiably curious learner about their successes. And I'll tell you, I think another counterintuitive point is if I want to go learn how to be a great husband, I don't go to the person that's been married for 40 years. I go to the guy that's been married 3 times. If I want to learn how to build a multi-million-dollar business, I don't go to the richest lady in town. I go to the lady that's had 3 bankruptcies. Because I tend to learn more from people from their failures and setbacks than I do their successes. Because again, I don't have their Ivy League education. I don't have their charisma or their charm or their natural intellect. I can't replicate their genius. What I can do is avoid the mistakes you made. And so the more a mentor is willing to be vulnerable and transparent, not like, I'm a Catholic, so it's easy for me to confess all my sins. I got some practice, people, but you get the point, right? It's sort of, as a mentor, open the kimono and be willing to talk about mistakes you made, because half the battle in life is just avoiding the pitfalls that everybody else made and learning, don't do that, do this, don't say that, say this, don't think that way, instead think this way. And I think mentorship can be invaluable if the mentor, unbuttons their tie and says, okay, let me tell you about the biggest mistake I made on the path to the C-suite. Let me tell you about the biggest client I lost, or let me tell you about how my hubris or my arrogance got ahead of me and I totally missed this opportunity. I think that's where most learning comes from.
No, that's a great point. And I like that paradigm shift of learning on somebody else's mistakes and failures than on your own.
But it requires the mentor to be vulnerable, because remember, humility flows from confidence. Confident people, I think, are capable of being humble. It's arrogant people who are incapable of being humble. And so if you're going to be a mentor, you have to balance that humility and confidence, because inherently in your role, you have some intimidation power, right? I don't think most leaders understand how powerful they are. I think most formal leaders woefully underestimate how powerful they appear. whether it be from how they dress or their vocabulary or their business acumen or their title or their car or whatever it is. I think we tend to underestimate how powerful we come across. And the same in mentoring. Lower the barrier. Become almost their peer. Ask good questions. So if you did that, what do you think would happen? If you went that way, what do you think would be the upside and the downside? You could have a great mentoring session just by asking questions and never offering any advice, just helping the other person explore. So if you actually pursued the path of being a CFP, how would that change from being a CFA? They're very different, right? And just questions like that. And you could have the other person have some epiphanies without you offering any prescription at all.
That's great.
By the way, I know the difference between a CFA and a CFP. Just
No,
big difference.
Yeah, I think you just brought the fundamental point also that you describe in your book as one of the takeaways as well, is this difference between being confident but still being humble, right? So there's a fine line of while being confident, but at the same time not being arrogant. So how should we think about it? How can we maintain that balance, and how can we not come across as arrogant?
You know, this is a difficult challenge for me because I'm not a humble person naturally. I'm a grateful person. I have flashes of kindness, but I'm not a humble person. I like the spotlight. I like to be in charge. I like to be the leader. I like to be right. Who doesn't? And so I have to remember what humility means, because in my earlier career, and I've had a 30-year career in the leadership development industry. Ironic, given how much I think leadership is tough. I used to be under the wrong impression that humility was quiet, shy, weak, meek, kind of retiring people. I thought success was loud, charismatic, bold, and in charge. That's how I thought leaders needed to act, eat or be eaten. Of course, I was an idiot. And then I realized that humility isn't about being quiet or shy or an introvert. Humility is about not needing to be the smartest person in the room. Humility is about not being the genius, but rather the genius maker of others. That your job is not to be the fount of all knowledge. Your job is to bring wisdom to the table and constantly check, okay, so when I was faced with that, here's what I did, but I'm not them. And we have very different backgrounds and all of that. And so what is it I can know about them that might help them get to where they want to go? I mean, a constant challenge for a mentor is to check your journey from their journey. Your journey looks nothing like their journey. So I'm not an expert in humility, but I think part of it is just having a presence around it, right? Having a self-awareness of when your confidence might be coming across as hubris. It's something I struggle with.
No, and I think it's fair, and a lot of us struggle with it, and a lot of leaders probably do. But kind of on that point of being a good mentor, we got the question from Sarah in chat, and she's saying that obviously the benefits for a mentee are clear. A mentee is learning, developing, and learning from a mentor. So what are the benefits of actually being a mentor?
Yeah, you would think it would be intuitive, but Sarah, it's a great question. The happiest people I know are the ones that have a consuming amount of gratitude in their life, that they have an abundance mentality. They literally enter every interaction with, there is enough. There is enough budget, there's enough credit, there's enough fame, there's enough love, there's enough joy, that they have an abundance mindset in every interaction, which is tough coming off a pandemic, because every day we struggle with this. Good people still have scarce thoughts. So what I think's in it for the mentor is it feeds your abundance mentality, right? It feeds the fact that you've learned some valuable lessons that you could help others learn as well. So that's maybe theoretical, but I still think it's tangible. What's really tangible is anyone I have mentored, I have learned so much from, whether it be their technical skills because they were younger, whether they taught me the difference between Instagram and Pinterest, which I didn't know for several years, right? Or I don't infer that all relationships are mentor is old and mentee is young, but most cases you're going to have someone who's mentoring someone perhaps more junior than them and maybe even younger than them. So I will go into the relationship thinking, there are some things that I want to learn. Honest to God, I don't really know how to use Slack. I don't use Slack. Don't judge me. Don't hang up. I don't use Slack. I'm an email kind of guy. I'm 53. But you know what? I really want to use Slack. I need to use it more. And I'm not sure quite how to get started on TikTok. And I don't really know how to use Instagram fully with all, you get the point, right? So I will pick some things that I really want to learn on. And I might say to my mentee, hey, in the last 5 minutes, can I ask you a favor? I'm trying to learn this or that. Could you coach me on that? I mean, I'll be very clear. Now, I won't say, hey, will you coach me on how to read a P&L if they don't know how to read a P&L, right? But I'll have done some research. And if I think they're on TikTok, then I might say, hey, I'm struggling. Give me an overview of why someone would use TikTok versus YouTube in 2 minutes or less. I'm making that up. I don't mean that to be prejudicial in terms of age, but I'll find a topic that I want to learn from them and outright ask. And I'll tell them, hey, in the last 5 minutes, if you don't mind, I'd like to learn from you. I might ask some generic questions without talking about your particular leader. What's your impression of the leadership in this company? I'm not going to report you back. I'll use some of the time to learn from them things that I might have some hubris or some ignorance around or some blind spots around. I also might go so far as to say, hey, we've just spent 45 minutes chatting. I know I have some blind spots. Everyone does. I'm giving you complete permission to tell me, what has the last 45 minutes been like? And I don't want you to pay me any compliments. I want you to spend 5 minutes talking about how I could be more influential. Maybe it's my energy. Maybe it's my voice, my rate, my tone, my pitch. Maybe it's my examples. Maybe it's the words I use. I'd like you to mentor me on what you think I could do to become more credible and more influential. Not a single compliment. I just want areas of growth. Now, again, it's been 45 minutes. You don't know me very well, but there's got to be some things that I did that were confusing or challenging or annoying. Carte blanche. And when they do, don't refute it. Don't dispute it. Don't deny it. Just say, that took some courage. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Now you've built this level of trust, and my gosh, my mentor asked me to give her feedback on her style. And when I did, she didn't bite my head off, right? But you got to make sure that you say no compliments, because you might get the sycophant. Oh my gosh, you're so wise. And if I only could be like you. And no, that's not helpful. That's useless. Long answer to your question.
No, but it takes a lot of courage and self-awareness to actually ask for feedback.
Actually, it takes
hear critical
self-awareness.
feedback.
It takes self-awareness to realize how unself-aware we really are.
No, that's well said, for sure. And kind of to the topic of all these great people, wonderful people you've interviewed and you've wrote about, but have you seen anything that they all have in common? What is one trait or one quality that all of these great leaders and mentors have in common?
I was asked this question on a podcast. I did 140 podcasts on this book. And I was asked this question by a podcaster, and he didn't like my answer. And then he took me to task for 20 minutes over my answer. And I kind of tripled down. A, just to piss him off, but B, I kind of thought, no, I actually really believe this. But I'm going to give you the same answer because I believe it to be true. An indefatigable work ethic. Not like 80 hours a week for 40 years where their family fell apart or they had a heart attack or they burnt out, right? I mean, if we've learned anything from the pandemic, it's that life is short and precious, and no one on their deathbed wished they'd spent one more hour at the office, right? A cliche, but so important. They have this indefatigable work ethic. I've interviewed, Jack Canfield, right? Chicken Soup for the Soul, 500 million copies sold. John Gray, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, 100 million copies sold. I mean, I've interviewed people that have made billions of dollars. And I've interviewed people that are survivors of plane crashes and, were traumatized through an abduction or rape or violation. What they all have in common is they have this indefatigable energy to share their story and help other people. So one is they have this abundance mentality where they just generally want to help other people. It's part of who they are. But it's interesting. I interviewed John Maxwell, the famous leadership author, who's written like, I don't know, 100 books, 90 books, I think. Last week, I interviewed Deepak Chopra. He's written 94 books. What's Deepak Chopra doing with one more podcast? He doesn't need any more money, doesn't need more fame. The whole world knows who Deepak Chopra is. By the way, there aren't two more dissimilar people in the world than Scott Miller and Deepak Chopra, just for the record, right? I learned a lot there, people. But what they have in common is they have this indefatigable work ethic. They just want to teach and learn and grow and give. Jack Canfield does not need to sell one more copy of Chicken Soup for the Soul. Do the math on royalties, 500 million copies sold, right? But he continues to do podcasts and interviews and webcasts and keynotes because I don't think it's because he loves the limelight, which I'm sure he does. I don't think it's because he needs more money. He don't. I don't think he's a workaholic. I think it's because he has an insatiable desire to keep giving back and he works super hard. Can I share one story from a mentor?
Sure.
I don't know if you've all read the book yet, but I think the person who's had the biggest impact on my life is Nick Vujicic. He's the first mentor. By the way, if you'd like, whenever I write a book, I create a card deck. When I speak around the nation, I don't use PowerPoint. I create an actual printed guidebook that I give out to everybody in the audience with all the mentors. If you'd like a copy of this card deck for free, connect to me on LinkedIn, send me a message on LinkedIn, give me your physical mailing address, and my team will send you out a free card deck. Nick Vujicic is master mentor number one. Born in Australia, lived in California, now lives in Dallas, Texas. Nick Vujicic, written a dozen books, very famous motivational speaker around the world. Nick was born with no arms and no legs. He has no limbs, no hands, no toes, no feet, no fingers, no arms and no legs. He tried to kill himself when he was, I think, 9 by throwing himself off his kitchen counter in front of his parents, in front of his mom, because he couldn't comprehend how he would live. He couldn't comprehend how his parents could ever have a life with a child like this. Fortunately, he didn't kill himself. He went on to become an incomparable force of good and abundance and gratitude. And the transformational insight is about gratitude. I invited Nick to my house once for a dinner. We have a lot of dinner parties at our home. And Nick came and I was drinking some water in front of him. And I realized how subconsciously I do everything I do in life, right? Drinking water. Nick cannot drink water. He cannot use the restroom. He cannot scratch his head. He cannot walk. He has no arms, no legs. His body ends beneath his groin. He has a small foot-like appendage with a couple of toes that he can text with. That's it. He's a full-time caretaker, a wife and 4 children, twins. And so I'm sitting across Nick on the sofa, and I realize that for being someone who talked a good gratitude game, I wasn't grateful ever in 50 years for my hands, for being able to drink a glass of water whenever I wanted to, or scratch my head, or adjust my glasses, or use the bathroom in private, or dress myself. Took him outside to have dinner with 15 friends, and he was telling hilarious stories of life on the road with no arms and no limbs. Funny because he's very disarming. When you meet Nick, he says, "Hey, check my hand." He's like, "I'm just kidding. I don't have any hands." And he says, "Give me a hug." He's very disarming that way. He's a lovely human being. And I was outside at dinner. I was eating some key lime pie. And I looked down. I didn't even remember picking up the key lime pie. I had no knowledge of ever walking over to the table with my legs, picking up the pie, finding the fork. And it was that evening when I really kind of had this watershed of the things that I should be grateful for. Nick leaves that night. A couple of nights later, a big snowstorm in Salt Lake, Sunday night, 9 o'clock, boys are in bed. I got to take the garbage out, which I hate doing, right? Because it's down the stairs and inevitably there's like, chicken juice coming out of the garbage. You know the point, right? So I take the garbage outside, recycling in one hand, garbage in the other. I get outside, ice everywhere, sliding across the driveway, finally get to the garbage cans and I realize, oh crap, it's Sunday night. It's garbage night, right? Meaning Monday is garbage day. I got to roll 3 garbage cans down a 70-yard driveway out to the street, slipping and sliding. One tips over, chicken, you get the point, right? And it was that night that I realized what Nick Vujicic would give to take out the garbage. What I hate to do is unload the dishwasher. I don't know why, but I hate it. What Nick Vujicic would give just to once unload the dishwasher. And it reminded me of something one of our co-founders taught, which is there's 3 ways to view life. I have to, I ought to, or I get to. I have to take out the garbage. I have to have a high courage conversation with a colleague. I have to terminate someone next week. I have to, I ought to, or I get to take out the garbage. I get to stop and give gas. I get to have a high courage conversation with my neighbor about their fruit tree that's dropping fruit on my car. You get the point. And once I started to really realize that I've been living my life much more through the lens of I have to, or I ought to, and never I get to, completely transform my level of gratitude in life. And now I do my best to live every moment of my day. 4 keynotes today, I get to. Tomorrow morning, 2 a.m., keynote in Qatar. I get to get up at 2 a.m. and give a keynote to Qatar. And so I'm really trying to live my life in a better spirit of gratitude, because I've talked a good game, but I don't think I was nearly understanding of what it means to be grateful for arms and legs when Nick has none. He's the happiest person I know. Thanks for letting me riff on that.
Definitely. Nick is a true inspiration, and obviously the first chapter of your book had a tremendous impact on me personally. And I've seen Nick speak at a lot of events and TED Talks and everything. And so it's definitely, it's just life-changing. But unfortunately, sometimes we have to see things in comparisons to really appreciate what we have. Any other ideas on how to develop that attitude of gratitude, if we didn't have a chance to meet Nick in person like you had?
I mean, everyone has, I read a phrase recently that said, remember when you used to want what you now have, right? And so I'm just trying to become more mindful for small things. I mean, if the pandemic didn't push you towards gratitude, then Ukraine will. And so every night I am, with like many of you, the recipient of lots of success in life, and financial security and such, and a great career and friends and health and family. Had a clean colonoscopy a week ago, which I was scared to death about because I was 53 and I was a couple of years late, and I have 3 young boys. And so watching the horrors on television of what's going on in Ukraine, of elderly women and men that have left behind their apartments, their fish, their dogs, their Afghans, their photographs, their pensions, their medication. I don't know how you don't turn on Ukraine coverage and be grateful that you could have toast for dinner because you've got a loaf of bread. I don't mean to be high-minded or moralistic at all, right? I don't want toast for dinner. I want Ruth's Chris for dinner. But quite frankly, tonight, I'm grateful to have leftovers. I don't love leftovers. I hate leftovers, to my wife's horror, right? I want a fresh baked bread and dinner, or I'm happy to contribute to whatever. You get the point, right? But I think it's just to look around and you see what's going on in the world right now. We survived COVID. It was a traumatic event for everyone. Many of you lost loved ones. Many of you have lost friends and family members that are still alive, but you've lost them because of the debate of masks and of school and of in-person and hybrid or vaccines or Bill Gates and you name it and all that, right? I mean, it's been a rough couple of years, and I'm trying to de-escalate a lot of the drama in my life and be grateful that my 3 boys will show up tonight and they'll complain about their tennis lesson. They'll complain about their math school from their private school today. And, my wife will complain about the gas price, and I will too. And I'll just each moment and every moment say, not I have to, not I ought to, I get to put $80 of gas in my car, and I'm so thankful I can afford it.
I think that's fundamental. And another concept you discuss in your book is mindfulness. And how do you see mindfulness kind of playing a role in this whole professional development, leadership development aspect?
Okay, you asked me the two areas which I'm the worst: humility and mindfulness. Thanks a lot. You know, I mentioned that I interviewed Deepak Chopra last week, and he kind of stopped me in my tracks because he said, you know, there's human beings and there's human doings. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm a human doing. I am doing 2 podcasts. I am doing 4 books. I'm doing a radio program. I'm doing parenthood. I'm doing spousehood. I'm doing, you know, I spend so little time being. I live in the future. I don't live in the past or the present. And that, I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I live in the, anybody relate? Anybody live in the past here? Anybody live in the present? Anybody live in the future? Yeah, so do I. I like that because I like to look forward to Friday's dinner party. I like to look forward to, you know, church, look forward to a vacation. I live my life in the future completely because I like to be in control of my future, right? I like to make sure that no one is controlling my future. No one's controlling my career. No one's going to, so as a result of that, I think I greatly compromise ever living in the present, ever. I am incapable of living in the, I'm incapable of sitting down at lunch with my wife on a Saturday and not be thinking about dinner on Saturday or church on Sunday or work on Monday or what bill is due or when is the mortgage due or I don't know what the answer to your question is, Victoria, other than being mindful of how unmindful I am. I'm really trying to be less worried and less concerned about controlling my future and more trying to appreciate the present. And I suck at this. I just say it straight up. But the more that I'm aware that I suck at it, the more I can talk about it. And the more I can say to myself, I'm just going to go to dinner with my wife, and I'm not going to think about all the things I've got to do, all the deadlines. I'm just going to do my best to resist that temptation, because all of us now are suffering from an attention deficit. You don't have to have a diagnosis to know we all have an attention deficit, the onslaught, the barrage, the attack for our attention. Newsflash, there aren't going to be any less Netflix options next year. There's going to be triple the number of Netflix options, right? And triple the number of emails and email accounts. And so I'd ask maybe members of your team, what are you doing to be more mindful? Because I'm not your guy. My book was not about mindfulness. I wrote about it. I struggle with it. Deepak's comment on there's human beings and there's human doings really struck me hard. And so part of my success in life has been from doing more. And because of that, I don't spend hardly any time being. I don't regret that yet.
No, but at least recognizing your weaknesses and what you're not strong at. I think that's the first step at.
Ask me what I'm good at for a change. I'm kidding.
It looks like Linda has a question. Maybe Linda.
Yes, I'm too lazy to type, and you know it's hard for me to frame it. I feel like over the last hour we've been talking about mentor-mentee relationship, and I feel there's a lot of contradicting ideas. You know, it sounds like when the mentees are seeking out in this direction, they are more intentional and they absorb the information and lessons or mistakes the other person made. And a couple of us also talk about our society, we try to create mentor programs. So from the other direction, we don't see a lot of success stories. So is this mentor-mentee relationship works more organically if it's informal?
Yeah.
So what's your thought on that, Scott? And, I feel the ideal situation would be everybody is trying to seek out feedback from other and not, I'm here to help you and to give you advices. That will be more productive, isn't it?
I don't think anybody wakes up and say, you know what I need? I need a mentor. That's what I need. I don't think anybody wakes up and says that to themselves. I think they have a setback. They have a chasm. They have some kind of conflict in their life where someone may offer to them, you know what made me so successful, or what helped me is so-and-so mentored me. How I got on the executive team is a member of the executive team mentored me on my communication style, my self-awareness, my listening skills, my diplomacy. I don't think people naturally wake up and say, I need a mentor. I think something has to usually happen for them to say, okay, this path isn't working for me. I need a different path. And so one of the ways I think to help to make that awareness is to talk about it, is to have the successful people in your organization talk about how mentorship helped them get to where they are. Have them evangelize it. Say, hey, my entire career, because if they're truthful, it's accurate. My career has been the result of people investing in me, people who believed in me more than I believed in myself, people who took me under their wing and said, Scott, don't do that again, or you're going to implode. That's what mentorship is. And I don't know that the younger, I say younger, I hope I don't offend anybody, but in most cases, the mentor relationship is someone that's kind of been there, that's mentoring someone who's trying to go there in the hopes that there is the same. Because Linda, there are formal mentorship programs, right? I mean, I'm invited weekly to give a kickoff keynote to a company's mentorship program. And what I usually talk about is what are the roles of each of you? What are watch-outs? What are pitfalls? But they've already been selected in. They've already been invited to come in, and they've been matched with someone who they often don't know. Some of the worst ones I've seen are, I've seen someone with a sales career being mentored with the director of travel. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know what, because they're both men, because they're both gay, because they've both been to Italy. I mean, who did that? I don't know. I don't know. So I think the deliberation with which mentorship programs are designed needs to be, what is this person trying to accomplish and who has wisdom or experience or mistakes around that? But to your point, Linda, I think it was Sarah and I were talking, we were cut off because of the timer, and she was talking to me about, actually it wasn't Sarah, it was someone else. I was cut off from Sarah, but I was cut off from the next person as well. And she was talking about how do we get more females to join our group? And I said, I don't think it's just the responsibility of female members to recruit female members. I think it's the responsibility of male members to recruit male members. Make sure the men in your chapter are shepherding women in as well too. And I think in a mentorship program, it's important for mentors to be communicating how they benefited from mentor, because it's sort of like no one wakes up and says, I need to get my teeth cleaned today. It's usually your dentist reminding you that it's time, and you might need to have some education around that. I may not have addressed your question. Your question was multifaceted, but I think mentors need to communicate what the value is so more mentees feel comfortable entering into an opportunity.
Yeah, you answered the question. Thank you.
Thank you.
We received another related question in the chat, kind of again from this mentorship relationship standpoint. How can we, as maybe mid-level professionals who are not at the top yet but we would like to be there, how can we approach a mentor? How can we look for a mentor? How can we build that relationship?
I think it takes a little bit of bravado and guts. I mean, no one can help you unless they know you need help. No one can help you unless you ask. And so it takes a little bit of courage, maybe having you move outside your comfort zone. Here's what I've done. I've done just that, right? I've usually picked the mentor. I've never been approached by someone who said, I want to mentor you. I mean, no one says that, right? They're busy. So it never has happened to me. But I can tell you, I've anointed a lot of people my mentor, whether they wanted to or not. And depending upon the person, I may or may not have called them my mentor, right? I'm a kind of a smart cat. So I might have said, hey, can I take you to lunch sometime and pick your brain in this business I'm building? I promise not to ask you for any loans. I don't want you to open up your Rolodex. That's a term from the 80s, by the way, for you younger people. But I would treat people differently. In some cases, I might ask someone, hey, can I ask you a question? I've watched your career, I've watched your success, and I've really admired your journey. I wonder if you might be willing to invest in me over a couple of hours of your time, maybe like 3 or 4 half-an-hour sessions. Because when people hear mentor, they think, oh my gosh, an hour a week, whatever it is. So calibrate it carefully. I really admired how you've built this brand of collaboration and trust with others. And I've struggled with that. And I really admire that skill. Could you invest a couple of half-hour phone calls with me to learn how you've done that? You get the point, right? Is to maybe not lower the boom. I get at least 3 or 4 emails a week. Scott, will you mentor me? And the same thing goes by my mind. I don't have a free hour. I don't have an hour. I have 80 hours in a 70-hour work week. I don't have an extra hour. If they said to me, Scott, could I have 30 minutes of your time to talk about how to launch a book? I'm like, I'm a sucker. You got it. Drew, find 30 minutes on the schedule. I'm happy to do it. And 30 minutes turns into an hour. And then I fall in love with the person. I say, hey, I've got more to share. Do you want to talk again? Or if the person doesn't take notes or asks, questions that are irrelevant, then I probably will say, well, great. I'm glad that was good. So I think you got to kind of ease into it and kind of know the person's schedule, know what they're proud of, know how to approach them. It's highly situational.
So yeah, what I'm hearing is research your person, be prepared, and be specific.
Yeah, be very specific and be willing to set some boundaries. In fact, as the mentee, don't make the mentor set the boundaries. You set the boundaries. I'm only going to ask for 3 30-minute phone calls. I promise you, I will not ask for you to be my advocate, fund me money, introduce me. I just want to absorb some of your wisdom that I think might benefit me. I liked Sarah's question. She's like, well, so what is there? There's no impetus. There's no, crisis. There's no triggering event. Then you're probably not learning and growing. You're probably just comfortable and you're coasting. I think that self-disruption is probably, Victoria, to one of your questions, another commonality in all these mentors. They self-disrupted. They constantly moved outside of their comfort zone. They took risks. They did things that they weren't comfortable in. Rachel Hollis, you may know, is a friend of mine. She wrote some very famous books called Girl Wash Your Face and Girl Stop Apologizing. Meteoric rise 2 years ago, meteoric fall a year ago. I'm loyal to her and I wish her only well. But Rachel said something I'll never forget. She said, most people aren't afraid of failure. They're afraid of other people watching them fail. And so as you're looking for a mentor, as you're looking to grow in your career, I think a fundamental principle is to self-disrupt, is to recognize, where are you stagnating? Where is your comfort level? Because I guarantee you, if you pick a mentor that knows anything about you at all, they'll have some advice for you. They'll have some blind spots that they could help you identify that could exponentiate your influence, your career, and so on. I see a couple of hands raised.
Yeah, Linda, did you have another question? Or?
I see Radhika. Is it Radhika?
Yeah, that's me. Specifically to the point that you just mentioned in terms of, I just kind of had a question. It's more personal, but you could put it into the lens of mentor and mentee relationship. It's about how you talk about gratitude, mindset of abundance, and a mindset of carrying humility and carrying yourself with humility. And I'm sure you've come across a lot of people in your time and your interviews and conversations where you meet people who are not open to these ideas. The fact that all of us are here have on some level, given importance to these things, which means that we know the importance of having these qualities, these virtues in our lives. So how do you deal with people who are not in this mindset? And if the necessity of the situation dictates that you have to kind of, be in that position, how would you carry yourself there? What would your ideas be in that situation? And would you even allow yourself to dictate that, you could open their minds to such things? Would it even be okay to assume this kind of thing? So long term short, what's your idea about it? You're mute, I think.
Scott, looks like.
Scott, I think you're mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I unplugged my microphone. I don't know what happened there. My first part of your question, I thought, you know what? There's 7.5 billion people in the world. Go find some new people. But then you said, well, maybe there's 7.6, whatever. Then you said, but if you're forced to work with them, what do you do, right? So you kind of brought me back down to reality. Here's a couple of thoughts. Dr. Covey, who's the co-founder of the Franklin Covey Company, he wrote the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He was quoted as saying so many wise things. One of them was, be a light, not a judge. Be a model, not a critic. Be a light, not a judge. Be a model, not a critic. In my experience, the likelihood that you're going to change someone's personality is 0. Ask my spouse. The likelihood you could change yours is higher, but barely. And so, this quote from Gandhi is such a cliche, but it's so true, right? Is be the change you want to see. So I think to the extent you have any chance of influencing someone, it's modeling the behaviors you would hope to see in them. Is why I'll tell you, it's why leadership is not for everyone. I'm a bit of a pariah in the leadership industry. I do not think everyone should be a leader of people. I think that's total bunk. Not everyone should be a commercial airline pilot. Not everyone should be an anesthesiologist. Not everyone should be a CFA. And sure as hell, not everyone should be a leader of people. And what happens is most individual producers get promoted to be a leader of people, and they don't realize that most of the success that made them a great individual producer is inversely correlated with being a leader of people. And most of them implode. So an attempt to answer your question is, you've got to do your best to model the behaviors you want to see in them and try to be a transition figure. For example, here's a good point, and I'm mindful of our time. I'll try to make the story short. Is if someone is gossiping on your team, then you need to be a transition figure. And here's a good example. Let's say that, Radhika and I are talking, and Radhika is talking disparagingly about Linda, and Linda's not there. It's my job to say to Radhika, hey, Radhika, I'm going to guess that if Linda knew that you felt that way, it probably would hurt her feelings. And I really encourage you to talk directly to Linda about it. And if I had that same experience, I'll do the same. Now, I've not shamed you. I've shut you down, but I've been a model. I've reminded you that Linda deserves you to tell her that directly. And it probably would hurt her feelings, just like it would hurt mine, because you build trust with those who are present when you are loyal to those who are absent. Because as Radhika is trash talking Linda to me, what I'm thinking is Radhika is going to trash talk me to Linda. And so I think it's so important that you model the behavior you want to see in those other people. If you want to see humility, then demonstrate that. If you want to see punctuality, you demonstrate that. If you want to see personal responsibility, vulnerability, if you want members of your team to take more responsibility for their mistakes, then you need to be uncharacteristically responsible for your mistakes. You need to stop the meeting and say, you know what? That was actually my idea. And I take full ownership for that. I had not thought that through. My ego got the best of me. I clearly wanted to be right. I was more concerned, quite frankly, with being right than what is right. And I'm learning. I mean, those types of statements can be a watershed in a meeting. People watch your behavior very carefully. That doesn't mean you're going to change what they do, but you're going to start to repel people that don't feel comfortable being late, by being blamers, by being gospels. They won't want to be around you. And you'll start to magnetize people that want to be around that. That is not a cliche. It's 100% true.
Thank you.
It's a high standard.
Well,
it's a high standard in friendships. It's a high standard in relationships, in the workplace. But in 30 years, I know it's a principle that is pervasive across industries, cultures, companies, you name it.
Thank you so much for answering that. Thank
It's a
you.
great question. My answer might have been weak, but your question was strong.
No, it was every bit as strong. I mean, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Scott, for joining us today. You are a true inspiration, I think. And even though you mentioned at the beginning that you might not be a humble person, but I think you've been pretty humble with us today, sharing, some of your maybe blind spots that you're working on. And that's really inspiring and helpful for us to see that even a person who spent 30 years in leadership, met a lot of great people who are so successful, still has something to work on. So
I'm not sure.
maybe we are not that bad after all.
Invite my wife Stephanie next time. She'll tell you all the things that I need to work on.
Maybe we'll have a separate session with her.
Please don't. Thank you, Victoria.
We're definitely looking forward for volume 2 and for more insights from you, and we'll be on the lookout for that. But
awesome. If you want the card deck, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to send one to you. I won't come to your house. I won't stalk you. My team will send you a card deck. Send me your physical mailing address and I'll send a deck to you.
I don't think we would mind if you show up one day.
No, you would. I drink all your champagne. Thanks, everybody. Sarah, nice meeting you as well. Nice meeting everybody. Linda,
Thanks,
Andrew,
everyone.
Brandon, thank you.
Thank you, Scott. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And our next quarterly webinar is coming up in May. So stay on the lookout for that. You'll get some communication in your emails shortly. And as you can see, we'll discuss how to deal with stress and lead with courage with Praneet Pal. And one other mention I wanted to make is that Scott talked about the crisis that's happening in Europe. The collaborative WIM community is actually very supportive of community in Ukraine, and we work closely with the CFA Society of Ukraine. And what are they rolling out is actually an opportunity for their members to get access to some of the jobs available anywhere in the world, really. A lot of people and a lot of society members have been affected by that. And so anything you hear about, maybe job openings at your firms or anywhere else, please feel free to share with us at team@collaborativewim.com. And we will work with Civil Society Ukraine on that, and we'll send out some more formal communication about this shortly as well. So thanks, everyone, and till next time.